One of the biggest selling points of Overwatch 2 was the infamous removal of all forms of crowd control. This goal hasn't been fully accomplished, just like everything else that was announced alongside those changes, and some abilities that have the attribute of manipulating the position of enemies, or even worse, your own teammates, have been left unchanged or added in. If Blizzard really wanted to remove the most annoying forms of CC, then why did Roadhog slip past with the health and hook buff? Luckily for us, the mistake was quickly noticed, and the wild hog as we knew him has been now replaced by this domesticated pig. Can't wait for the rework that will turn him into a guinea pig. This is a very good trend, slowly but surely getting rid of all the annoying factors and still learning from those who did the game better and avoided any forms of stunts entirely and left the mobility tools to only affect yourself. Today's video will do the designers' jobs for them, because they are now all busy working on new skins thanks to Bobby, and we will try to redesign all forms of crowd control in the game into something actually good. We'll also focus on strictly the tank role, because if we had to redesign all present forms of CC in Overwatch, this video would be too long. So if you'd like a part 2 where we will fix the support role too, then you know what to do. And without any further ado, I'll stop rhyming and use this moment to admire this beautiful piece of fan art that I received on the server. Truly amazing. Now I can officially say in person, thank you so much Drain for drawing this, and now seriously this time, let's begin the video. I ain't some weak narrator, therefore I will start with what is most likely the hardest case of CC abuse among the tanks. There's not one, not two, but actually 3 forms of limiting the enemy player's movement. The entire kit of Wrecking Ball is built upon smashing your entire body, aka the ball mech, against the enemy players, playing your very own bowling simulator every game. It wouldn't feel right when a giant and fast steel ball would have phased through enemy foes without inflicting any form of knockback. So how do we even approach this problem? Firstly, let's tackle the biggest issue, the fireball. And sometimes in life, the simplest answers are usually the best ones. So removing the entire knockback stat and replacing it with fast and sharp pushback might be a better solution to tackle the effectiveness of ball's knockback. We can't remove it entirely, as it would just break the entire vision of this character, but by reducing the knockback you still give ball this wrecking through effect while in fireball, and you don't impact the enemies to the point of them flying in the air. Next is the pile driver, and here once again a simple fix of replacing the knock-up and pull-in with an explosion on impact. Upon landing you create an explosion that does more damage the closer the enemy was to the impact zone. Maybe scaling the explosion damage with the height you started casting the ability from would have encouraged ball players to use the grapple for setups more rather than just rolling through the enemies. Lastly, the ultimate, the literal area denial tool. Let's get a little bit more creative. How about instead of mines that stay in one place, Hammond releases 4 mini ball robots that seek out enemies like K9 units. They roll towards the enemies, and when in range of let's say 10 meters, they switch to the gun form and start shooting the enemies. This not only sounds fun and hilarious to watch as 4 mini wrecking balls gun down someone, but it is also way easier to counter with only having to focus down 4 objects instead of an entire field. And once again, it is more beneficial to use this ability high up in the sky to spread the drones further from each other. That will be it for ball, as there are 10 more tanks to go, but luckily for us, it should be smooth sailing now. At first glance, you might ask, wait a second, D.Va doesn't have any form of crowd control. Wrong! Similar to Ball's case, D.Va knocks enemies aside while boosting through them, but instead of a boring fix of just removing the knockback entirely, we're doing it creative style. D.Va, instead of boosting anywhere she wants, now upon casting her shift ability, enters overdrive mode. In this mode, her primary weapon shoots twice as fast, and her movement is also enhanced because the boosters are now making you go speedy. This, in my opinion, is not only healthier for the game, as it removes the CC entirely, but also replaces the high mobility flight with a more readable and impactful ability. To keep the D.Va in this quick moving and high mobility tank category, I'd imagine this overdrive ability would last 2 seconds, and it would be on a similar cooldown to the boosters, so around 5-second mark. And to top it all off, the overdrive can be used with the defense matrix for those clutch saves, and when activating the ult, it would fly off in the distance where you were aiming, so identical to the ult we have right now. So you have a less annoying ability for your opponents and more fun ability for yourself, and you still have your original fun ultimate that can fly above roofs for some sneaky nuke detonations. Okay, I need to start with the easy part now. Seismic Slam is an easy fix, as simply removing the slow is a good enough fix, but the Rocket Punch? The goddamn Rocket Punch? You know what? Remove that garbage. Also, remove the Seismic Slam. And even remove the Power Block. Scratch all of that. Make Doom a tank he deserves to be. Not an annoying pushback machine and a flying Tarzan, but an absolute mobility fighting beast. Focus his kit around the possible combos you could learn, with abilities with low cooldown, but short range mobility and swift damage. Instead of the dump Rocket Punch, let it go through people and lightly knock them away, not launch them to Numbani. Now what? You got behind the enemies and they are ready to fire at you, so you will power block, right? Wrong! You can now swoop in an arc on the right or left, depending if you press E or Shift, and squeeze those primary fires in between. But what if you don't want to engage straight ahead? Well, without the right-click cast, your abilities are different. You can begin your combo with something else, like a dodge similar to McCree's roll that would replace the original shift button, and after you roll, you can't swoop from right or left, but you can either smash the ground to deal bombastic damage, or you can shoot yourself into the air. And after that, your last ability is once again different, and you could do a small meteor strike. I hope you can imagine how cool all of that could play out. The skill ceiling for Doomfist no longer would be on a C level, and it would also be more fun to play against, as you are no longer slammed to all walls around the map, but you have to predict where he will go, trace him, and above all, not die to his teammates while he's doing all that crazy stuff around you. Maybe I do want DPS Doomfist to come back. Honestly, I really like the throwing knife. It's a way more skilled mechanic than just hooking someone in, and there is way more variety with what you can do with this one ability. But for the sake of sticking to the topic of today's video, the pulling mechanic has to go. We can already see in game what might be a better replacement for the throwing knife though. A throwing axe. And to not leave the knife behind, leave the passive melee attack stat as it is. Oh my god, how can you screw up so badly that after the reduce of CC changes, Orisa has more crowd control tools in her kit than before? You know what? Let's just speed through this segment. The spear can pierce enemies, and instead of knocking them back, Orisa has 50 HP per target hit, giving her more survivability. The spear spin is replaced with the orb, but this time the orb doesn't suck enemies in, but when recasted makes all enemies hit visible through walls, and all allies hit get movement speed, so similarly to Anna's nade, it has two different effects depending on who you hit. Ult is reverted back to the old bongo, and you can't do nothing to stop me. Also, Fortify is nerfed. Ravenous Vortex is a very unique ability, but once again we are going to implement a quick fix by exchanging the crowd control attribute with buffing the raw damage it does, and the only reason I know what's the proper name of this ability is thanks to the hero review I did a few days ago. Maybe you should check it out later. The charge must stay. I'm sorry, but this is such an iconic ability and such a big part of Reinhardt's kit that I can't just change it without adjusting everything else. But I still have a great idea how to make the charge a little bit more fair for the pinned target. There are many situations where the enemy Reinhardt just decides to take you on an adventure across the entire map. So I suggest adding a get out of pin mechanic, where if you spam spacebar fast enough, you can escape Rein's charge after 2 seconds of not hitting a wall. This way you are not stuck helpless the whole time, and you can actually position yourself to fully counter the charge if the Reinhardt isn't smart. This change could encourage better planning of charge usage and make the players feel more freedom in their gameplay, instead of just staring at the screen waiting to die upon impact. The Rock is not only a great actor, but it's also a very fun ability to land, but it's really hard to not give more than just the damage, so I suggest adding a new effect called Concussion, where upon getting hit by a rock for 2 seconds all your movement inputs are reversed. So instead of looking left, your character moves right. Instead of moving backwards, you now move forwards. This might be more annoying than getting stunned, but after time and getting used to it, you will start to fully counter the debuff. Therefore, I still think this stat is more fair and healthy to play against, instead of just getting knocked to the ground helpless. The ult, on the other hand, is a massive movement limitation. Therefore, I suggest instead of pulling enemies up in the area after casting, make it slowly ramp up damage, and at the very end of the duration it will instantly kill anyone standing in the area. To compensate this power, I think making the area of effect a little little bit smaller would be totally enough. It also would ramp up to the maximum not in a second, but rather in a time frame of 4 or even 5, so everyone has time to leave the zone, and those who decide to ignore it and stay in the cracks of universe itself just to counter it with turning into an ice cubes are perfectly fine. Short and sweet answer. If you waited all this time to hear what I have to say about Roadhog, then just watch this video. I go very in detail there with what is good and bad about this character, and there are some very nice and creative changes shown way better than I could in this video. The belly flop of Winston doesn't need to have a knockback as badly as Wrecking Ball, so I guess if people are willing to sacrifice their only way to make space between you and Diving Monkey, then the knockback can go. The Primal Rage, on the other hand, is once again a difficult task if we want to keep the vanilla mechanics and limit all the knockback, because similarly to Jump Pack's effect, if Winston doesn't knock away his targets, he can just constantly damage them and overpower them with the enormous amount of health he has. The fact that this singular ability is also as iconic, if not more iconic, than the Reinhardt's charge doesn't help at all with my creative juices, but I'll try my best. What I'll suggest is upon casting Primal Rage, Winston still has the enhanced jump pack, he still gains that massive health pool boost, and he will still have access to his primary weapon. But not in a way you imagine. Instead of simple lightning bolt shooting, all that electric power is transferred into his fists, and by slamming everyone left and right, he no longer applies knockback, but rather creates a chain lightning that travels to all enemies nearby. There might be some Volibear in there, and for those who get it, then congrats on being a loser, but I think this way Winston can still be a big threat, but the way you counterplay his ultimate is way different. He no longer focuses on juggling people, but rather focusing groups to cause the most havoc. The duration would stay the same in my opinion, and maybe to make Winston just a little bit more fun, the jump pack upon landing will also create the chain lightning, if it hits targets directly upon landing. The last tank on our list, and all we have to tackle, is a black hole. I've done more difficult tasks before, like going outside, following the trend of simple fixes, replacing the mobility limitations with raw damage. This usually fixes everything, so instead of a black hole that pulls enemies in, Zarya launches a projectile that implodes after some time, dealing massive damage to enemies standing near it. I even installed Heroes of Might and Magic 5 just so you can see this in action. As I said, this is a lazy solution, but thankfully I have a cheap workforce set up in the background, with Bright Minds working for me for absolutely free, and on top of that, they all can be found in this handy and comfy place called my Discord server. There are some okay ideas like maybe Zarya's bubble, but bigger, make Zarya laser, but bigger, or make Sigma's kinetic grasp, but bigger. Oh wait, actually this one's good. But among those ideas, there is this one that is described so well in detail that it might take a whole another episode to actually explain how it would work, look and feel. So let's try to make it quick. Velvet suggests that the Graviton Surge should be replaced with a shield generator inserted up Zarya's ass. Think Transcendence, but actually good. The shields given to allies around you would also count to your energy count, and also emphasize the teamwork playstyle. Quote, I imagine the shields given would have to be gained slow to not make it a press to win button, and to not automatically put Zarya on 100 energy for the entire duration. Overall, I think the closest thing to this idea is the rally ability of Brigitte, but instead of health, you gain those shields. Nicely thought through, lore accurate ability. Very cool. So, what do you guys think about those changes? Do you think they would have made the game better and more fun? And if you think you have a better option, then go ahead and come join the discussion under the comments or in the Discord server itself. If you enjoyed the video, then I highly recommend subscribing, and as always, thanks for watching, have a lovely day, bye bye.